Hi everybody, this is Algebra 1, Lesson 76, and this lesson covers consecutive integers. Alright, so in this first problem we're asked to find three consecutive integers such that the sum of the first and the third is 146. So when it talks about consecutive integers, that means numbers in a row, like 1, 2, 3. So they're just all in a row. Alright, so the first step to solving these kinds of problems is to name each of these. So our first is going to be called n. Our second would be n plus 1, because if we went from 1 to 2, we have to add 1, okay? And our third is going to be, if we went from 1 to 3, we would have to add 2, so it would be n plus 2. Okay, so to solve this, all we have to do is put these in there when it tells us what integers to use. So the sum means to add the first and the third. Okay, so we're just going to add the first and the third. First is n, and now we're going to add the third. The third is n plus 2. And that's going to equal 146. That up there. Okay, so now to solve this like we would any algebra problem, so we're going to put our n's together, so we'll get 2n plus 2 equals 146. And then we need to subtract 2, because we're trying to get n by itself. Alright, so we're going to be left with 2n equals 144. And then we just divide by 2. And we're going to get n equals, see, half of 14 would be 7, so it's 72. Now 72 isn't our answer. We're asked to find three consecutive integers, so not just one number. Our answer is going to be 72, would be n, so that's our first one. And then our second one would be the next number after that, so n plus 1, which would be 73. And then our third would be n plus 2, which would be 74. Okay, so that's the answer to that one. Alright, let's try another one. Find three consecutive integers such that twice the sum of the first two is 2 less than 3 times the third. Okay, so this one's a little more complicated. First, we're going to name our numbers. So we're going to have three numbers, 1, 2, 3. Our first we're going to name n. Our second is going to be n plus 1. And our third is going to be n plus 2. Okay. Alright, so twice the sum of the first two. Okay, so our first two are going to be n, and we need the sum of the first two, n plus 1. Okay, so n is our first one, and then our second one is n plus 1. And we need twice the sum of the first two. So we're going to put that in parentheses. The sum of the first two means we add the first two numbers, and we're going to multiply that times 2. Twice the sum of the first two is 2 less than 3 times the third. So we need 3 times the third. And our third is n plus 2. So there's 3 times the third. But we have 2 less. So this side over here is 2 less than this side. So what we have to do is subtract 2 over here. That's just like we've been doing with these. Alright, so now all we have to do is solve. First step over here is to rainbow this. So we're going to get 2n plus another 2n plus 2, because 2 times 1 is 2. And that's going to be equal to, we got to rainbow this side, 3n plus, we got to rainbow this side, 3 times 2 will be 6. And then we have our minus 2. Next step will be to combine like terms. So I've got to put all my n's together here. So I'm going to have 4n plus 2 equals 3n plus 6 minus 2 would be 4. Okay, so now I got to get my n's together, so I'm going to subtract 3n right here. And on this side, so at this point we're just solving like a normal algebra problem. Those cancel. We get 1 n left. And then if we switch, let's see, we'll have plus 2 equals 4. And then we just subtract 2. And we get n equals 4 minus 2 would be 2. Okay, and like I said before, one number is not your answer. We need 3 numbers to get the right answer. So the number would be 2 for our first. Our second would be 2 plus 1, so that would be 3. And then our third would be 2 plus 2, which would be 4. Okay, so your answer is going to be 3 numbers. Just like that, 2, 3, 4. Alright, let's try another problem. Okay, this one's a little different. It has 4 consecutive integers. Find 4 consecutive integers such that 6 times the sum of the first and the fourth is 26 less than 10 times the third. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is name them. So 1, 2, 3, 4 integers. Our first is going to be n. Our second will be n plus 1. Our third will be n plus 2. And the last one will be n plus 3. Alright, 6 times the sum, that means add, of the first and the fourth. So first we got to add the first and the fourth and then multiply that times 6. So our first is n. Our fourth is n plus 3. And then all this goes in parentheses. And it's getting multiplied times 6. Okay, that's going to be equal to 26. That is 26 less than 10 times the third. So I'm going to take my third, which is n plus 2, and I'm going to multiply that times 10. So I'm going to put my n plus 2 in parentheses. Okay, and it said that this side, 6 times the first and the fourth is 26 less, so I'm going to subtract 26 from the other side to make those even. Alright, so now I'm just going to solve this like a normal algebra problem. Instead of rainbowing first right here, I'm just going to turn that into 2n. n plus n would be 2n, and then rainbow it. Okay, so then I'm going to have 6 times 2n would be 12n. Oh, come on, pen. And then 6 times 3 would be 18. And that will be equal to, then we have to rainbow here. 10 plus n would be, or 10 times n would be 10n. And then rainbow here, so plus 20. Minus 26. Alright, now I got to get my n's together and add like terms. So this would end up being negative 6. Alright, so I would have, let's subtract 10n both sides to get the n's together. Okay, so that would leave 2n. plus 18 equals, those canceled, negative 6. Okay, now I'm going to subtract 18. On both sides. And we get 2n equals negative 6, negative 18 would be negative 24. Okay, and then we just divide by 2. Okay, so n is going to be equal to negative 12. So that's not our answer. We need 4 numbers, so negative 12 will be our first. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. If your number's negative, what will be negative 12 plus 1 to get our second number? If n equals negative 12 plus 1 is going to equal negative 11. So then our third number would be negative 12 plus 2, which would be negative 10. And then the last would be negative 9. Okay, so there's our answer right there. It's kind of tricky when you have a negative number. Just make sure, see those are all in a row, 12, 11, 10, 9. So just be careful with those. And when you have 4, you just name your numbers first. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video and work those practice problems, and I'll come back and work them for you. Alright, so hopefully pause the video and work these. Find 3 consecutive integers such that the sum of the first and the third is 142. So first we're going to name our numbers. We have our first, our second, and our third. And this is going to be n. We're going to have n plus 1 and n plus 2. This is a lot like that first example we did. So the sum of the first and the third is 142. Our first is n. And our third is n plus 2. And we get 2, that equals 142. And then we put our n's together, we'll get 2n plus 2 equals 142. Oops. Okay, and then we got to subtract 2. And we get 2n equals 140. and then just divide by 2. And n is going to be equal to 70. So if n is 70, our first number is 70. Our second would be 70 plus 1, so 71. And then our third would be 70 plus 2, so 72. Alright, so there's your answer right there for A. Okay, this one wants us to find 4 consecutive integers, so we're going to go ahead and name these. Our first one would be n. Then we're going to have n plus 1, n plus 2, and n plus 3. Okay, so it says 4 consecutive integers such that 8 times the sum of the first and the third. Okay, so first we need the first and the third, and we're going to multiply that times 8. The first would be n, and the third would be n plus 2. Alright, and then all that gets multiplied times 8. Is 40 greater than 10 times the fourth? I'm going to put my equal sign, and then I'm going to multiply 10 times the fourth, and the fourth is n plus 3. Okay, but now I have to figure out where this 40 goes. Okay, if this side right here is 40 greater, that means to make it equal, I have to add 40 over here. Alright, now we're just going to solve this like a normal algebra problem. I'm going to go ahead and cross these out and write 2n right there, because n plus n would make 2n. Okay, now I'm going to rainbow. 8 times 2 would be 16. N. And then another 8 times 2, and we get 16. And that's going to be equal to, rainbow this one, 10n. And then rainbow there. That's 30. 3 times 10 is 30. And plus 40. Alright, and we could go ahead and add together our 30 and our 40 to make 70. Next step, we want to get these ends together, so I'm going to do minus 10 on both sides. Okay. These are going to cancel. And I'm going to have 6n plus 16 equals 70. It's just the 30 plus the 40. Okay, now I'm going to subtract 16. And subtract 16 over here. Okay. And I'm going to get 6n equals 70 minus 16. 70 minus 10 would be 60, so 54. Okay, and then we just divide by 6. And 6 times 9 is 54, so n is going to be equal to 9. And then n, our second one will be n plus 1, so that will be 10. And then our third one is n plus 2, so that'll be 11. 9, 10, 11, 12. Alright, and that's it for the practice problems. Yeah, there is the answer to B. That's it for the practice problems, and that wraps up lesson 76. Thanks for watching.